The scream tore through the marble corridors like shattered glass. It wasn't the first time the sound had echoed through the Sterling mansion that week, but this time something felt different. This time, the silence that followed was even more terrifying than the cry itself. In the shadow of one of Manhattan's most exclusive addresses, a tragedy was unfolding that money couldn't fix. A child was drowning in grief, and no amount of wealth could teach him how to breathe again. But before we understand how one woman changed everything in a single moment, we need to go back. Back to where it all began, on a morning that started like any other day of survival. Jasmine Carter's alarm didn't go off. It never did anymore. The phone was 3 months past due for replacement, and the battery died randomly throughout the night. But Jasmine had trained herself to wake up before dawn anyway. Her body knew the rhythm of necessity. She sat up in the darkness of the studio apartment she shared with her teenage brother Marcus. The radiator clanked uselessly in the corner, and she could see her breath in the air. She moved quietly, not wanting to wake him before his school alarm. The mirror in the bathroom was cracked down the middle. She avoided looking at her reflection as she washed her face with cold water. The hot water had been shut off 2 weeks ago. Her uniform hung on the back of the door. Gray shirt, gray pants, the logo of Premier Cleaning Services stitched across the pocket. She put it on mechanically, her mind already calculating today's impossibilities. Rent was due in 4 days. Marcus needed new shoes. The electric bill had a final notice stamp on it. By 6:15, she was on the subway heading downtown, pressed between early morning commuters. She closed her eyes and let the train's rhythm steady her breathing. If you're watching this story, take a moment to like and subscribe. What happens next will change everything you think you know about invisible people and the power of one gentle moment. Don't miss what's coming. The building scraped the sky. 73 floors of steel and glass that reflected clouds like mirrors. Jasmine used the service entrance, swiped her badge, and rode the freight elevator up to the penthouse level. Mrs. Whitmore, the head housekeeper, was waiting. She was a woman in her mid-50s with steel-gray hair pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her face. Her eyes were the color of winter storms. "You're late," she said, though Jasmine's watch showed 7:04 and her shift started at 7:00. "I apologize, ma'am. The train was—" "I don't care about your excuses." Mrs. Whitmore's voice was ice. "Mr. Sterling expects perfection. You'll do the East Wing bathrooms, the study, the dining room, and the child's playroom before 10:00. The windows need to be streak-free. I'll be inspecting." Jasmine nodded, taking the supply cart. That was 4 hours of work compressed into 3, but she'd learned not to argue. As she began cleaning, she could hear voices drifting from other parts of the penthouse. Sharp voices, frustrated voices. "I don't care what they're paying you, I'm done. That child is a demon. He threw a toy train at my head, actually threw it. I could have been seriously hurt." 2 young women in designer nanny uniforms stormed past Jasmine, one of them crying, the other speaking rapidly on her phone. "Yes, I need my things picked up today. No, I'm not going back in there. Find someone else." Jasmine kept scrubbing the marble countertop, invisible as always. Mrs. Whitmore appeared in the doorway, her face carved from stone. "The child's bathroom needs cleaning. The last nanny left a mess." Something in the way she said it made Jasmine pause. "Ma'am, I'm just cleaning staff. I'm not trained for childcare." "Are you refusing an assignment?" The words hung in the air like a blade. Jasmine thought of Marcus, of the eviction notice taped to their door, of the phone calls from the school about overdue lunch payments. "No, ma'am." "Then get upstairs. 2nd floor, 3rd door on the left, and do not disturb the child. Clean quickly and quietly." Jasmine gathered fresh towels and cleaning supplies. As she climbed the curved staircase, she could hear it, a sound that made her heart clench. Not screaming, worse than screaming. Crying, deep, broken, inconsolable crying. She paused outside the door marked with a small wooden sign, Christopher. The room was enormous, a small child's paradise destroyed, toys scattered everywhere, books torn, a lamp knocked over, drawings ripped from the walls. And in the center of it all, a little boy. He couldn't have been more than 3 years old, blonde hair matted with tears, blue eyes swollen and red. His small body shook with sobs that seemed too large for someone so small. He didn't notice Jasmine at first. She stood in the doorway, forgetting entirely about the bathroom, about Mrs. Whitmore's instructions, about everything except this broken child. She'd seen grief before. She'd worn it herself after her parents died in the apartment fire that left her and Marcus alone. She recognized it the way you recognize your own face in a mirror. Slowly she knelt down, not approaching, just kneeling, making herself smaller, less threatening. "Hey," she said softly. The boy's head snapped up. His face was blotchy and wet. He stared at her with something between fear and rage. "I'm Jasmine," she said. "I'm not here to hurt you, I'm just here to help." He picked up a stuffed elephant and threw it at her. It bounced harmlessly off her shoulder. She didn't flinch, didn't scold, didn't move. Instead, she began to hum, low and gentle, a melody her mother used to sing, an old gospel hymn about troubled waters and weary souls. Christopher froze. Jasmine kept humming, her eyes closed now, swaying slightly. The melody filled the destroyed room like warm honey. When she opened her eyes, Christopher was staring at her, not with anger anymore, with something else. Curiosity, recognition maybe, as if somewhere in that melody he'd found a memory of safety. Slowly, impossibly, he took one step toward her, then another. Jasmine didn't move, didn't reach out, just stayed there kneeling, humming. Christopher walked right up to her. His small hands reached out and touched her face, gently, carefully, as if checking to see if she was real. Then he did something that made the world stop. He pressed his tear-stained cheek against hers and whispered, "Mama." Jasmine's breath caught. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she kept them back. She wrapped her arms around him slowly, carefully, like holding something infinitely precious and infinitely fragile. "No, baby," she whispered. "I'm not your mama, but I'm here, I'm right here." "What on earth is going on in here?" The voice was male, deep and sharp with shock. Jasmine looked up to see a man standing in the doorway, tall, mid-30s. Wearing an expensive suit with the tie loosened. His face was angular and hard, the kind of handsome that came with money and control, but his eyes were different, exhausted, haunted. Sebastian Sterling stared at the scene before him. His son, who had terrorized 7 nannies in 3 months, who screamed when anyone touched him, who threw things and bit and refused to be held, was curled peacefully in the arms of a woman in a cleaning uniform. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. Jasmine gently shifted Christopher, who refused to let go of her. "Jasmine Carter, sir. I'm with the cleaning crew." "The cleaning crew." He repeated it as if the words made no sense. "My son doesn't let anyone touch him, not since," his voice broke, "not since the accident." "The accident?" Jasmine asked gently. Sebastian stepped into the room. Up close, she could see the grief carved into him, the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way his hands trembled slightly before he clenched them into fists. "My wife, 7 months ago, car crash. She was bringing Christopher home from daycare when a drunk driver ran a red light." His voice was flat, mechanical. "She died at the scene. Christopher was in the back seat. He saw everything." Jasmine's arms tightened around the boy. "I'm so sorry." He hasn't spoken her name since that day, hasn't let anyone hold him. The doctors said it was trauma, that he needed time, but it's been 7 months and he just keeps getting worse. We've tried everything. Child psychologists, specialized nannies, medication, nothing works. He looked at Jasmine with something between desperation and disbelief. "What did you do?" I hummed. An old song my mother used to sing." "That's it, you hummed." Jasmine met his eyes. "Sometimes people don't need fixing, Mr. Sterling. They just need someone to sit with them in the dark until they remember light exists." The words settled between them like snow. Sebastian Sterling, billionaire tech CEO, sat down slowly on the floor beside her. He looked at his son, peaceful for the first time in months, and something cracked in his carefully constructed armor. "Miss Carter," he said quietly, "I'd like to hire you." "Sir, I'm not qualified. I don't have training in childcare. You just did what 7 professionals couldn't do. You gave my son a moment of peace." His voice was raw. "I'll triple whatever you're making, quadruple it, just please, please help him." Jasmine looked down at Christopher, who was falling asleep against her shoulder. She thought about Marcus, about the bills, about survival. But more than that, she thought about this little boy who'd lost his mother and was drowning in a world that didn't know how to love him back. "I'll try," she whispered. Mrs. Whitmore's face was unreadable when Sebastian Sterling informed her of the new arrangement, but her eyes burned with something cold and calculating. "A cleaning woman, as the child's nanny." "As whatever Christopher needs," Sebastian said firmly. "Miss Carter will have full access to the child, her own room on this floor. She answers only to me. Is that understood?" Mrs. Whitmore's lips pressed into a thin line. "Of course, sir." But as Jasmine carried Christopher toward the room being prepared for her, she felt the housekeeper's eyes on her back, sharp as knives. This wasn't just a job anymore. This was something else, something dangerous, something that would test everything she thought she knew about survival, dignity, and what it means to be seen. If this story is touching your heart, don't forget to comment where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. What happens next will shock you. You won't want to miss it. The room they gave Jasmine was small but beautiful. Cream walls, a large window overlooking Central Park, a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud. It was the nicest room she'd ever slept in. But that first night, she barely slept at all. Christopher woke up screaming 3 times. Each time Jasmine went to him, hummed the old hymn, held him until he calmed. By morning she was exhausted, but something had shifted. Christopher reached for her now, trusted her. Sebastian watched from doorways, his expression unreadable. Jasmine had learned the rhythm of the house. Wake at 5:30, get Christopher dressed, bring him downstairs for breakfast, simple routines that seemed to calm him. But on the 3rd morning, as she entered the dining room with Christopher holding her hand, she found Mrs. Whitmore waiting at the table. "Mr. Sterling has an early meeting," the housekeeper said coldly. "I'll be overseeing breakfast." Jasmine nodded, helping Christopher into his chair. She'd prepared his favorite, scrambled eggs, cut fruit, and milk in his special cup. Christopher ate happily, occasionally looking up at Jasmine and smiling. Mrs. Whitmore watched with narrowed eyes. "You're spoiling him," she said suddenly. Jasmine looked up. "I'm sorry." "Letting him dictate the routine, making special meals. A child needs discipline, not coddling." "He's 3 years old and grieving his mother," Jasmine said quietly. "He needs comfort, not correction." "And what would you know about raising children properly? You're from the Bronx, aren't you? I can hear it in your voice. How exactly does someone from your background know anything about raising a Sterling?" The words hit like a slap. Christopher stopped eating, sensing the tension. Jasmine took a slow breath. "My background has nothing to do with my ability to care for this child." "Doesn't it?" Mrs. Whitmore leaned forward. "You're a cleaning woman who got lucky. Don't mistake temporary charity for belonging. You'll never be one of us." "Good," Jasmine said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "Because I'm not trying to be you. I'm trying to be someone this child can trust." Mrs. Whitmore's face flushed with rage. But before she could respond, Sebastian Sterling's voice cut through the room. "Is there a problem?" He stood in the doorway, dressed in a sharp navy suit, his expression carved from ice. Mrs. Whitmore stood quickly. "Not at all, sir. I was simply discussing Christopher's routine with Miss Carter." It sounded like more than that. He walked to the table, picked up Christopher, who immediately wrapped his arms around his father's neck. "Miss Carter is not staff. She is Christopher's caregiver. She answers to me alone. If you have concerns about her methods, bring them to me, but do not ever speak to her that way again. Am I clear?" Mrs. Whitmore's face went pale. "Yes, sir." "You're dismissed." After she left, Sebastian set Christopher down and turned to Jasmine. "Are you all right?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "I meant what I said. You're not staff. You're—" He paused, searching for words. "You're family now." Jasmine took Christopher to Central Park every afternoon. They'd feed the ducks, play on the swings, watch street performers. Christopher was talking more now, small words: duck, tree. Jazz, his version of Jasmine. On a Thursday afternoon, warm for autumn, they were sitting on a bench sharing an apple when a woman approached. She was elegant, mid-40s, designer coat, perfect makeup. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Christopher," she said warmly, "my sweet nephew." Christopher immediately hid behind Jasmine. The woman's smile hardened. "I'm Catherine Blackwell," she said to Jasmine, "Christopher's aunt, Sebastian's sister-in-law." "Jasmine Carter," she replied, standing protectively. "Yes, I've heard about you." Catherine's eyes swept over her dismissively. "The cleaning woman who's playing Nanny." "I'm caring for Christopher." "How noble!" Catherine's voice dripped with condescension. "Tell me, Miss Carter, what's your endgame here? You think if you play the devoted savior long enough, Sebastian will fall for you, marry you, give you access to the sterling fortune." Jasmine felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I'm here because Christopher needs someone who sees him as a person, not a trophy." "How touching!" Catherine knelt down, trying to coax Christopher out from behind Jasmine. "Come here, darling. Aunt Catherine wants to see you." Christopher shook his head, gripping Jasmine's leg tighter. Catherine's face twisted with something ugly. She stood abruptly. "This is unacceptable. A child of the Sterling family being cared for by someone like you. I'll be speaking to my attorneys." "About what?" Jasmine asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "About custody. Sebastian is clearly not in his right mind. Hearing an unqualified stranger to care for his traumatized son. A good lawyer will have Christopher in proper care within weeks." She walked away, heels clicking on the pavement. Jasmine knelt down and pulled Christopher into a hug. "It's okay, baby. She can't hurt you." But as they walked home, Jasmine wondered if that was true. The rumors started appearing in gossip columns. Billionaire CEO's new romance. With grainy photos of Jasmine and Sebastian leaving the building together, she was simply carrying Christopher to the car. From maid to mother, the Cinderella story taking Manhattan by storm. Sebastian's board of directors called an emergency meeting. Catherine filed paperwork requesting a custody evaluation. And Mrs. Whitmore grew bolder in her contempt, accidentally giving Jasmine wrong information about Christopher's schedule, criticizing her in front of other staff, leaving messes for her to clean. One night after Christopher was asleep, Jasmine found Sebastian in his study, head in his hands. "I'm making things worse for you," she said quietly from the doorway. He looked up, exhausted. "You're the only thing keeping me sane. Your sister-in-law is threatening custody. Your board thinks you're compromised. The media is destroying your reputation." "I don't care." "You should." She stepped into the room. "Christopher needs you stable, secure. Maybe I should go, find someone properly qualified." "Christopher needs you." His voice was fierce. "Do you know what he did yesterday? He drew a picture, first time since the accident. Want to know what it was?" Jasmine shook her head. He drew you, holding his hand." Sebastian stood, crossing to her. You didn't come here for money or status or any of the things Catherine thinks. You came because you heard a child crying and you couldn't walk away. That kind of goodness is rare. Don't let them make you doubt it." Tears burned in Jasmine's eyes. "I'm just trying to help." "You're doing more than that." He reached out hesitantly, then gently touched her shoulder. "You're teaching him how to be human again, and you're reminding me too." The custody hearing was set for Friday morning. Catherine's lawyers had built a case. Sebastian's judgment was impaired by grief. The child was being cared for by an unqualified woman. Proper supervision required professional care. The night before the hearing, Jasmine couldn't sleep. She sat by Christopher's bed, watching him dream, wondering if this would be their last night together. At 2:00 a.m., Sebastian knocked softly on her door. "Can we talk?" They sat in the kitchen, the vast penthouse silent around them. "I want you to testify tomorrow," he said. "Maid." "I want the judge to see what I see, what Christopher responds to, not your qualifications on paper, your heart." "Sebastian, I'm terrified. What if they take him?" "Then we fight harder." He reached across the table and took her hand. The touch was electric. "Jasmine, I need you to know something. This isn't just about Christopher anymore." She looked up at him. "I haven't let myself feel anything since Maria died. I thought I was protecting myself, protecting Christopher. But he paused, searching for words. "You've reminded me that grief isn't the end of the story, that it's possible to love again." "Sebastian." "I'm not asking you for anything," he said quickly. "I just need you to know that what you've done for us, for me, it's changed everything. And whatever happens tomorrow, I want to fight for you, if you'll let me." Jasmine's heart hammered. "I'm a cleaning woman from the Bronx. Your sister-in-law is right. We're from different worlds." "We're from the same world now. The one where Christopher laughs again, where I remember what hope feels like. That's the only world that matters." The courtroom was cold and formal. Catherine sat with her lawyers, perfectly composed. Sebastian wore his armor, the expensive suit, the controlled expression, the billionaire's mask. But when Jasmine was called to testify, something shifted. She spoke simply, honestly, about Christopher's nightmares, about the slow trust built through patient presence, about the way he'd started saying please and thank you, about the picture he drew of the three of them as a family. Catherine's lawyer tried to tear her apart. "You have no degree in child psychology, no formal training. You were hired to clean floors, correct?" "Yes," Jasmine said calmly. "I was hired to clean. But when I heard a child crying, I didn't think about qualifications. I thought about pain, and I knew something about that." "How convenient." "No," Jasmine said, her voice stronger now. "It wasn't convenient, it was hard. Helping someone heal is the hardest work there is, but I did it anyway, because that's what you do when you see someone suffering and you have the ability to help. You help." The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, leaned forward. "Miss Carter, if I may ask, why did you stay? When the media attention started, when it became difficult, you could have walked away." Jasmine looked at Christopher, who sat quietly beside Sebastian, holding his father's hand. "Because he needed me to stay, and sometimes that's reason enough." The judge reviewed the case files, the testimony, the psychological evaluations. Then she looked directly at Catherine. "Mrs. Blackwell, I appreciate your concern for your nephew, but this court sees no evidence that Mr. Sterling's judgment is impaired. In fact, the evidence suggests his son is thriving. The child's trauma responses have decreased significantly. He's speaking again, drawing, playing. These are positive indicators." Catherine's face went pale. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "this court is not in the business of dictating who qualifies as a proper caregiver based on credentials alone. Miss Carter may not have a degree, but she has something perhaps more valuable, genuine care for this child's well-being. The custody petition is denied." Jasmine stood in Christopher's room. now redecorated with his own drawings on the walls. He was building a tower with blocks, narrating a story about brave knights and kind dragons. Jazz, look, he held up his creation proudly. That's beautiful, baby. Sebastian appeared in the doorway smiling, not the tight, controlled smile from before, a real one. Ready? He asked. Jasmine nodded. They were taking Christopher to the aquarium, his first big outing since the accident. As they walked to the car, Christopher between them holding both their hands, Sebastian caught her eye. Thank you, he said softly. For what? For seeing us, for staying, for being brave when we couldn't be. Jasmine smiled. Thank you for letting me. A year later, the tabloids had moved on to other stories. Catherine had quietly disappeared from their lives. Mrs. Whitmore had been replaced by a warm grandmother type named Donna. And Jasmine Carter, once invisible, now lived in a world where she was finally seen. Not because she changed who she was, but because someone looked closely enough to see who she'd always been. Christopher started kindergarten that fall. On his first day, he made a card for Jasmine, a stick figure family with the words I love you written in crayon. She kept it on her nightstand, next to the photo of her parents and Marcus, who now attended college on a scholarship Sebastian had quietly arranged. Some stories don't have fairy tale endings, but they have real ones. The kind built on patience, trust, and the radical act of showing up every single day, choosing love over convenience, presence over perfection. And sometimes, that's better than any fairy tale ever written. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, the most powerful thing you can do is see someone who feels invisible and remind them they matter. Your kindness could change someone's entire world. Thank you for watching.